Welcome to the Velocity Podcast. Today we're doing an LO Spotlight with Victor Contreras. Victor Contreras is one of our senior mortgage loan originators. You've been in the business now for how long?
It's my 10th year.
10th year.
Yep.
Boy, I remember you in like your first or second year.
First year, actually, yeah.
A bit of history there, yeah. Well, the best part about this is we get to have a nice conversation about what it is that you love about what you do, what drove you into the industry, what brought you here, and really gives our clients an opportunity to kind of get to know you a little bit better. So let's start at the top. What made you decide to get into mortgages?
You know, it was one of those things where I was kind of stuck in the corporate, rat race. Whenever I was right before I became a loan officer, I was working as an account manager, and I just saw like a glass ceiling where it was like, I'm not going to be able to get past this certain level. I just started getting that feeling in my stomach driving into work, like, I just didn't really want to do this. And a good friend of mine was a loan officer at another company, and he brought it up, thought I would be great at it. I didn't know a thing about mortgages, so I was nervous about that. Mm-hmm. But he explained the process to me. I went through it, and that was spring of 2016. Became a loan officer, got my license, and then a few months later, I meet Barry Palmquist. He became my manager, and thankfully, I was at a good spot for a new loan officer. A lot of different scenarios came at me. The support that I got was great, especially Barry. It was just one of those things where there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of misconceptions about the mortgage process. And I'll be honest, I was right there. I thought that you needed 20% down. I thought you needed, perfect A+ credit. And I learned a lot, so it was very eye-opening. And so I always try to remember that when I'm talking to my clients, because it's a nerve-wracking process sometimes. It can be stressful, but it's mainly the fear of the unknown. And once you actually take the steps and talk to somebody like myself, it kind of, the knowledge and that kind of alleviates that stress of just not really knowing where you're at. I think that education factor of it builds confidence, and that's what we try to do here, is build you a tailored specific plan for your qualification. If you're ready to go right now, great. If not, we'll tell you what to do, how to get ready, give you a step-by-step plan, and then we take it from there.
I mean, that is one of the great parts about, what you do, is that you do take the time and energy to focus and make sure the clients do feel educated on the process. Like you use the term, the fear of the unknown, which for a lot of, especially new home buyers or even people who already own a home but have never refinanced before,
right,
they have a lot of questions. And being able to answer those in a way that they understand, I mean, that's a key tool that not every loan officer out there has. And that's where a lot of people, I feel, get disconnected. You've always had great rapport with your clients. You always get great reviews. We can't complain about any of Victor's reviews.
Yeah, sometimes I'm a little too wordy and I talk a little too much, but I think it's really important for clients to understand what they're getting into. And for most people, this is the biggest purchase they're ever going to make, So, sometimes I'm very surprised at people that come, that I get and are, going through a refinance, and they have no idea like what kind of loan they're currently in, how the process works. And it's a disservice that the original loan officer did to them. So I try to, really educate. I think I'm very big on that part of it. And I like to spend time with each and individual client, because that's what they deserve. That's how I would want somebody to treat me, somebody to treat, any of my family members, to, explain everything. Because this is not, something that's common knowledge. I mean, it's there's a lot that goes into it, and that's why we have a job, to be able to explain this in layman's terms.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's definitely the most important piece, is making sure that they understand the process. They know what documents they need to sign. They know what to expect when they get to closing, and giving them that advanced knowledge really does make the process flow a lot easier for them. That's for sure. I'd agree with that. If you had to pick out one instance so far in your 10 years that's really stood out with you and that kind of says, yeah, this is why I do it, do you have a story?
Yeah. Actually it was a family member had been living in an apartment for, I mean, all her life. She just never thought she was ever going to be able to realize, the dream of home ownership. And I had already been a loan officer for a while. And they would ask questions every once in a while at parties, and then she finally came to me and said, "Hey, look, my lease is up, and I'm gonna have to find a new place to live here in the next 3 months. How does it work?" And I could tell there was a lot of nervousness, a lot of hesitation to it. And I explained the process and the different options. So we walked through it, and she was a lot better off than she thought she was, right? And that's usually the case. People think that they're tough on themselves, right? And so I explained, with your credit profile, your income, we can get you into a home with down payment assistance that'll cover, the majority of the closing costs. And she bought a $220,000 home in Fort Worth for, I think, $1,500 out of pocket, after it was all said and done, which was less than she was going to have to pay to, get into another apartment, right? With security deposit and first month's rent. She was looking at, over $3,000 to move into, another apartment. And she's been there now for about 4 years. About once a year, I'll get a call from her, asking questions about property taxes and, hey, why did this change? And that's another thing that I like to explain to clients is that once we're closed, it's not, all right, thanks, see you later. I want to be, the resource, right? Everybody has a barber, you probably have a mechanic, right? Nobody likes to change those things. Here at Click and Close, we want to be your mortgage lender. And if things pop up on the news or something like that and it brings up a question, give me a call. And so we're always kind of on the lookout, especially with my family member that, I've taken a look at, trying to refinance her, and it just hasn't been the right time. But, she's aware, and she's a lot more knowledgeable, a lot more comfortable asking the questions. And, she knows what an escrow account is now. She understands that. So, yeah, it was really gratifying. And that's always a happy moment, with clients is getting them to that point, especially our first time home buyers. Seeing their faces at the closing table once they sign on the dotted line and they get to take their picture with their agent, just close. That's the gratifying thing, is it's really, it makes me feel like I helped. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the reward at the end of it all. Exactly. I mean, we obviously we do this for a living. It's how we pay our bills, like everyone else out there. But there's a bigger component to it. But we build relationships. It's not just a transactional, like to your point, where it's like, okay, you're closed, see you later, never be spoken to again. And we do have some clients that have never found their way back to us, but that is the biggest difference between a customer and a client. And a lot of LOs look at, they're just a customer, they're just a number, and I'm going to get through this and do as many as I can. And the client relationship builds future referrals. It builds future business just with that client repeating back, or just every once in a while when they've got a question they can't figure out, being able to rely on someone that they trust is a big component of that. So that's and I'm glad to hear that that's your philosophy as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we're going to end it with 5 questions. We're going to hit you quick. They're going to be a little weird, but that's okay. So, vacation, mountains or beach?
Beach.
Okay. Ice cream, chocolate, or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Okay, see, he's already
vanilla guy.
Playing out there. Just kidding. All right, cheeseburgers or pizza?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
They're both comfort foods.
Yeah, it's like 1A and 1B for me, but I'm going to go with cheeseburger.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, there is a second component to that question. This is a pizza question. So, Hawaiian style or meat?
Meat. No fruit on my pizza, please. No fruit.
Yes. Yes. And then last but not least, what was your first vehicle?
My first vehicle was a 1996 Chevy S10. It was a Super Sport edition.
Ooh.
So it was, I thought I was the coolest thing, in my school. And it was a really cool truck. I love that truck. It was it was a cool story too. My dad was you know, we were in the market for a new car, and for me, and I told him I found this car on the Auto Trader magazine. I don't know if you remember those, right?
Yeah.
That's how you found cars back in you know, in the 90s. And I found this car. It was at the dealership, and my dad said he was gonna stop and look at it. And you know, he got home and he said, "Hey, they sold it." You know, and I was like, "Oh no!" You know, I was all disappointed. So he drove me to my little part-time job at Hobby Lobby. And when I got home, when he picked me up, we went into the front of the house, which was very strange because normally we parked in the garage. So he tells me, "Hey, you know what? Can you move the car around the garage?" So I pulled around the garage, hit the garage door opener, and my family's sitting on the tailgate of the bed, and there's my truck. And oh man, that was probably one of the best days of my life is when I got that truck. So, yep, red Chevy Sport S10 Super Sport. So
That's cool.
yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for spending some time with us. We appreciate it. Hopefully, our viewers have gotten to know Victor a little bit better. And if you need to refinance, purchase a new home, anything mortgage related, reach out to Victor and the Velocity team today.